Rainier Beach.
You're listening to RainierAvenueRadio.world. I'm Granville Emerson along with my partner,
Ronald Pepe King.
And we host the show Lidline Sports right here on RainierAvenueRadio.world, where we talk about football, basketball,
Local sports,
national sports, Seahawks,
UW,
Seattle U Redhawks,
Garfield Bulldogs,
all that and more right here on Lidline Sports on RainierAvenueRadio.world.
This is your RainierAvenueRadio.world community update on visiting Seattle area museums for free. Get your cultural fix on the cheap on First Thursdays. Free all day are the Birth Museum of Natural History and the Henry Art Gallery, both in the University District, the Nordic Heritage Museum in Ballard, the Seattle Art Museum downtown, the Wing Luke Asian Museum in the International District, the Northwest African American Museum in the Central District, and the Museum of History and Industry, Mohi, in South Lake Union. And free First Thursday evenings are the Museum of Flight at Boeing Field and the Living Computers Museum in Soto. Museums that are always free include the Center for Wooden Boats on South Lake Union, the Duwamish Longhouse in West Seattle, the Fry Art Museum on First Hill, the Klondike Gold Rush National Historic Park in Pioneer Square. Check with each museum for schedules and exhibits. This has been your RainierAvenueRadio.world community update on visiting Seattle area museums for free.
This is Paul Pearson, host of Star Time. And when I'm not using my GPS to navigate the land of 1,000 dances, I'm listening to RainierAvenueRadio.world.
Yo! What up, though?
I got to talk. I got to tell what I feel. I got to talk about my life as I see it.
All right, then. It's time for you to bring it to the table.
Turn up your radio wherever you at. We about to bring it.
Street Beat.
Yeah.
With Tony B. For the next hour, Tony B will give you a chance to tackle local, national, and international issues that affect your community. Street Beat. Street Beat.
Tony. What's up? It's me, Tony B. Welcome to Street Beat. Street Beat is the show that keeps you in touch with the beat of the city. And I have joining with me President of the Seattle King County chapter of the NAACP, Ms. Sadiqa Sakin. How are you?
Pretty good.
And also joining me, and why don't you grab one of those microphones? I don't remember your name. And Jasmine?
Jasmine Williams.
Jasmine, thank you for coming. And you are secretary?
Yes, secretary of the Seattle.
Of the Seattle King County chapter of the NAACP?
Yes.
Thank you for being here. We are going to be having a discussion about a number of different things. I would like to share some information with you about our president. I'd also like to share some information with you about the NAACP. What we are going to concentrate on here today is allegations that have been made, pretty serious allegations, and we'll get a different perspective. If you are unaware of what's taking place, we did a show yesterday. Mr. Carl Mack, who was the former president of the NAACP, joined us on the radio station. He had made some very public allegations, which he felt were fact. He came on the show. We discussed those allegations. He was certainly allowed the room to share his thoughts. And we did ask some questions, and we're very happy that Miss Sadiqa Sakin is back here today, and she is going to address some of those allegations, and we're going to get right into it. But before we do, I would like to just take a little time to welcome you to the radio station, and then also to your still fairly new position of president of the NAACP.
Yes, 9 months.
9 months.
Mm-hmm.
What is it that made you decide to run for this position? And again, you know, we'll talk just a little bit after this about what the NAACP does for folks who are familiar or maybe a little bit familiar. What made you decide that you wanted to take up this important position in the community and leadership?
So I've been a part of the NAACP since 2004 as a member. And then later on, I started a nonprofit back in '06, and they saw all the amazing work we were doing in the community, and I was invited to join the board that was in Snohomish County.
Mhm.
So I served from '07 to '10. And so took some time off because it is a lot of work. I served as their WIN chair. And I ran my nonprofit until 13. Then I took a break and did some traveling, lived overseas for a while. And then I fairly came back around 15. And I started getting back into community.
Mhm.
So when I came back to Seattle, I was pretty much going to everything possibly I could. And when I would say, oh, yeah, like to see exactly what's going on, I realized, so let me move it up a little bit. I joined the board of the Seattle-King County in 16. So 15, I got a little feel, went in and saw a meeting and realized where were the people. So I was a little concerned about that, like what happened, what's going on. At the time, I was just, it was just all surprising, like what was going on. And so I was asked by the president then, the past president, to join his board. We worked together on some projects before, years ago when I was the WIN chair back in Snohomish County. So he was familiar with the work and all that I was doing in the community, and he knew about the nonprofit, et cetera. And so when I joined the board, I started getting out there, and I realized that there was not any visibility. People were saying they didn't even know that there was an NAACP here in Seattle. And it was a little shocking. Or they would say they only heard of us when someone got shot by the police. And, there was a joke going around that we were ambulance chasers. And that was disheartening. And so those were some of the things that were presented to me. And then I started noticing. So keep in mind, I started a nonprofit with my own money. And I took it from 0 to 2.5 in the course of 8 years. And so grant writing, putting systems in place, succession plans, different things like that. This is what I do. So when I closed the nonprofit, I said I didn't want to do a nonprofit anymore because it's a lot of work. But I wanted to consult other organizations to support them in building their business to where I was. So it's more, you learn, you teach. And so pretty much that's the space I was in. And so when I saw that there was a need for more visibility, more of an infrastructure, things didn't come together in my head because I tend to compartmentalize everything. And so I said, okay, there's a need for something different. And I danced around the idea for a while. And I said, Allah, if this is for me, make it clear that this is for me. And so you name it. Everything was just falling in line that you should run. Why are you not the president? So, so on and so forth. And so that's what gave me the idea to take this on.
All right. Well, thank you for sharing that. And if you wouldn't mind, just at least a little bit, tell us about your vision for the NAACP.
So the organization's been around 110 years. It was started actually here in Seattle in 1906 by 1913 by Letitia Gray. So actually a woman started the organization here. And so my vision is the reality of the times that we're living in is that the mindset in the way that we did things in the 60s and the 70s, although it was amazing, it was great for that time, we can't take that into the 21st century. If it's been around 110 years, for it to last another 110 years, we have to change. We have to evolve. And so what I started to do was look at other branches that were successful and what they were doing in patterning our branch after that. And so keep in mind, I compartmentalize everything. And so if you're trying to put an infrastructure together and build something, if you have a vision, you have to find what works and what doesn't work. So it's kind of like a SWOT analysis. You're familiar with that, right? So that's pretty much how I would put things together. What works, what doesn't work. And so that's pretty much what the vision is, to take it into the 21st century. So setting up
just for anybody who, I don't want any confusion, when you said SWOT analysis, you are not talking about a defense team. I just wanted to make, for anybody who's listening, for some people they may associate SWAT with special weapons and tactics.
Oh,
that's not what you're talking about.
No.
Okay.
So my corporate mind, my
Yes.
apologies.
Mm-hmm.
So pretty much what it is finding out the areas of weakness, strengths, where it's
what's the acronym for that? I don't remember.
Oh my God. Oh my goodness.
Well, I know what you're talking, but I just want to clarify.
My
for
brain
folks.
is all foggy right now.
But it's not the SWAT that means special weapons and tactics.
Not.
It is.
So in the corporate world, you put together an analysis of what works, what doesn't work. So it's kind of like a progression plan of what you imagine it to be successful. And so you pattern typically after various organizations that it has worked or it's successful. Did you find it for me? Because my brain is cloudy. Can you?
So it's SWOT, it's strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats.
Yeah.
Okay. What was the last one?
Threats.
And threats.
Yeah. What could possibly take
strengths, weaknesses, opportunities,
and threats.
Yes. SWOT. That's what you were talking about.
Yes. Yeah. Sorry about that. So pretty much that's the way I look at everything, you know, and then I'm kind of modeling this branch after the very successful ones like Detroit. Detroit is doing amazing work. So is Los Angeles. So is the Texas, Houston, the Dallas branch. Even Portland is doing amazing work. So you look at branches that are successful and they have evolved, and they are basically taking the organization into the 21st century. Not to say that other other branches aren't. There are 2,200 branches. And so in order for this one to be successful, my mind is focused on, okay, what can we do better? What can we do different? And so sometimes you have to step outside of the box and dream and say, okay, this is where I want to go. And so when I put my board together, because yes, I put my entire board together. And so what I did was I interviewed the board and I saw where their skill set was in their professional world. And I put them in positions for the board. So they're already skilled and experienced in these areas. And so it was ideal to put them in those positions. And that's how I build my board. And then we will put together plans. And so when we speak about the NAACP, we're the largest west of the Mississippi. And so to be honest, I can march, which is great and wonderful. But if I want to make systemic change, I have to go to the state as well as the city, as well as the county, because the laws start in legislation. And so I have to follow them. And if they affect communities of color, then absolutely I have to be there to make sure that that bill doesn't pass that could potentially trickle down and affect communities. And so it's not just about marching or protesting in front of a store. Not to say that's wrong, but we have to evolve. When I say evolve, we have to change the mindset and we have to think bigger than our mama and papa organization. And that is my mindset. And that was the vision to take it to that next level.
You're listening to Street Beat. I'm your host, Tony B. This is Rainier Avenue Radio.world. My guests again are Jasmine Treasurer, Jasmine Williams?
Secretary.
Jasmine
Williams.
Williams, Secretary for the NAACP Seattle King County Branch, and Sadiqa Sakin, President of the NAACP Seattle King County Branch. And thank you for doing that. I just kind of wanted to create the landscape a little bit to give folks some background information on who you were and the NAACP and kind of the goals and mission that you are bringing to the table.
Okay.
I'm now going to specifically get into some of the allegations and start to unpack some of this stuff. Okay. Was it important to you, or why was it important to you to have the endorsement of Mr. Mack? That is something I think that he endorsed you. And he is an individual now who is raising a lot of these allegations publicly. For you, was it important to you, or why was it important to you to have his endorsement?
So I came to visit before I moved here because I came from Hawaii. And I was on vacation visiting my brother who was in the Army. And there was this rally going on downtown. And it was just, all these people. And I heard someone speaking and it was fiery. If you believe in what we're doing, join. And I just was like, okay, where do I sign up? How do I support what's going on? And come to find out, it was something that was going on surrounding, it was Karl Marx speaking. And so that was my memory of the NAACP. So I envisioned the people, community, supporting each other, and building something for going towards a common goal. And it was, okay, we're not going to stand for this and this and that. And so when I think of the NAACP, I think of leadership, leaders like Ben Jealous, people like that are actually doing the work, inspiring. They're trying to get things done and moving. And so I looked at him as one of those persons because that's what my memory was. And so like I said, I asked Allah that if this is for me, make it clear that this is for me. So I started my campaign and I went to Guerrilla Graphics. And so I'm getting some cards made so I can pass them out to let people know I've decided to run. And so David said, hey, you know what? Let me introduce you to somebody since you're trying to run. That's good. You're trying to bring visibility to the organization. Let me introduce you to this lady. So he introduced me to Tawanda, an amazing woman. And so she had conversations with her, expressed my vision and so forth. And keep in mind, when I had my organization, like 15 years ago, I got an endorsement by Dr. Mims. And see, people don't know that. So I'm not the type of person that jumps out, me, this is what I'm doing. That's not me. It's all about getting the work done. And so I had an endorsement, or she was supporting my nonprofit back in the day. And so Tawanda was like, oh, talk to Dr. Mims about it. So I started talking to her about my vision, what I would like to do. And then so happens, I was saying, one of the leaders that was really inspiring was Mr. Mack. And she said, oh, I know him. Let me call him and see if he might be interested in supporting this. And so it took about one or two calls. And then it was, oh, yeah, I can help, but I'm retired, but I can give you some advice. And that's how it started. And so I kept asking him, hey, can you endorse me? And he said, I will help behind the scenes, but I will not go public with it because, if you want to win this race, you have to be strategic about it. And I disagreed. And so I said, I think because we are in a social media world, you have to tell the world what you're doing and who's endorsing you. And that way people know if they want to support, they'll support. If they don't, they don't. And so it took a minute and I convinced him to endorse me publicly. And so that's how that started.
Okay. Did you feel that endorsement was based off of your ability to do the job well?
Well, I absolutely know. No question about it. And if people, if they believe in the idea and they want to see the movement actually be successful, get out the way. Stop all of the distractions. Stop all of the gaslighting and drama. Support. If you're really about your community, stop talking about it and be about it. And so that's pretty much that mindset, that I have. I still have it. So I think that was the space at that time that I was in.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I'm going to move on unless there's something else about that. That you want to say. Again, he was here, and it is what it is. I'm not trying to have
physically
this denigrated
here
to
on
some.
The phone.
Yes, you're on the phone.
Okay.
On the phone.
Okay.
And again, StreetBeat, we have open, honest, frank conversation. If you listened last night, Mr. Mack's way of phrasing it was that you followed him around like a puppy dog.
That's disappointing.
And so I'm giving you, again, you can address it or not address it. And so but I wanted to get your perspective on why it was important for you to have his endorsement.
The perspective was respect. I respect the idea and the vision that I thought I saw in that person years ago when he was speaking on community and what it was about. And so it's disappointing to hear all of the things that I'm hearing, but I like to rise above. You know, when they say when they go low, you go high. And so that's my mindset. So I hear it. It's unfortunate, but I don't entertain it.
Okay.
Because I know who I am.
Well, we have a lot of things to unpack here.
That's okay. I'm ready.
And so the essential thing is potential misappropriation of funds.
Okay.
And you're, according to Mr. Max, alleging that you produced no financial reports, and this is the whole thing about the fiduciary part of this, that you produced no financial reports for any of the meetings, and so there is no record of how the money was spent or if any voting was done, just that money was spent, and this was told to him in personal conversation. So I would like to start with that. Have you stolen any money, misappropriated funds, done anything that anybody would consider to be illegal with money, or that people would feel violated the public trust with fiduciary responsibility?
Absolutely not. So let's be clear. I came into office January 1st. I didn't receive the books until January 17th. So I am cleaning up, let's be honest, a mess. So I'm cleaning up 6 years of foolishness. And so why would I clean up a mess, do an internal audit, get all this documentation, turn it over to authorities? Yes, there is a case. And then do the same thing. How stupid can someone be to do that? I mean, that's just, and then just ruin everything that I've built over the years, over some coins, some pennies? Come on now. It's just ludicrous. So when I heard it, it was kind of laughable. Like, really? Okay.
Okay. I'm going to specifically address some of those things.
That's
fine. We'll start with the stipend.
Okay.
According to Mr. Mack, no one has ever received a stipend who has held this position before at the NAACP. You were given a stipend that was not voted on, according to Mr. Mack, by the board.
Okay.
And there wasn't again, financial stability within the organization to provide a stipend for this position. Your response to that is?
Okay, so like I expressed, I put together a nonprofit for 8 years. And so my skill set is building a nonprofit, which includes grant writing and everything that comes with building an organization. So I saw when I took over how damaged the branch was, the reputation. So I took a year off. I said to myself, I would take time off to work and do this work. So my bills are paid with my money. The stipend, and by the way, the board voted on it. When I expressed to them what my vision was and how we wanted to take this to the next level, they said, you're going to need a stipend. It isn't fair that because you've taken time off from work, that you have to use your own money to pay for gas, parking, and everything. I mean, I remember them saying, oh, it's close to $20 to park for 2 hours down in Seattle. And a lot of the work that I do is not just in Seattle, but it's King County, and King County is large. And so that stipend, which my board voted on, Jasmine, what month was that it was added in the minutes? That's why I had it here, to make sure for facts.
That was January 14th.
And who was it that spoke to putting that on, that I should have a stipend?
So it reads in our meeting minutes in January, in the executive board meeting, that David moved that the president to receive the following expenses: a work cell phone and stipend, and it was seconded by our labor chair, Bola.
Okay. So was that all?
I can read all of it.
Okay.
It says
Okay, go ahead.
Okay. And that our police accountability chair amends the motion that the president receive $1,000 per month stipend and cell phone, which costs shouldn't exceed $250. Which should include full coverage, subject to revision. And it was seconded by our criminal justice chair.
Okay, so that is 4 board members. 3 of them are attorneys. The one who suggested is a federal prosecuting attorney, former prosecuting attorney. So I didn't say this, I told them what my vision was. And they said, it doesn't make sense for you to be running around doing all this work. You're already paying all your bills as it is. And you have 2 kids in college. To be doing this work and us not at least compensate you for your gas, driving around, and any parking tickets, not parking tickets, any parking that you need to do, or anything else that contributes to the branch, as long as it's documented. I said, okay. So I put an app on my phone, which was called Miles IQ, that tracks every single place I go. I put in the information of where I'm going, address, and etc. And so everything was documented. I used a card, so it showed exactly every single thing I did. And so everything is documented. And our treasurer has all of it allocated. So if anyone wanted to say, hey, what are you doing with this? You can pull it up. Each month is allocated and it shows exactly what is done. So no, I'm not using it for personal gain. And realistically, in Seattle, minimum wage or minimum salary is $75,000 to $80,000 here. And so $1,000 is what the stipend is. So let's be clear, it's not $1,600, it's $1,000. And then the $250 was for the phone. The phone bill is not that much, but that's what was allocated. And to be honest, sometimes I don't even use the whole thing and it rolls over to the next month. So let's keep in mind, the money was not there for me to spend on personal gain, to get my hair done or whatever. And I think it's ignorant to even think that in 2019 and there's so many organizations that get stipends. And keep in mind, there are many branches of the NAACP that gives stipends. So let's just be real. This is 2019. Working for free, no one works for free. Well, should I say I am volunteering? My skill set is what I'm volunteering to build the organization. So keep in mind, I'm the one grant writing. I'm the one meeting and building the relationships again, not networking, but rebuilding the relationships, building partnerships, sitting in meetings, sitting in town halls, showing up for events for representation of the NAACP. That's what I'm doing. And it shows in my president's report each month what I've done. And also there's a calendar. So everything is allocated and documented. There's no running around, going on vacation with this so-called stipend. A stipend is just, it is a reimbursement of a person's time in whatever they're doing. I can't pay a bill with that. I mean, come on now.
Did this require a rewriting, a change, a vote in the bylaws? Mr. Mack, and again, I don't have this information, said that there was nothing in the bylaws that would allow this, in the governance, that would allow this to happen. Did this require any type of change in governance?
Absolutely. So the way it works, because I mean, it's changed since 15 years when he was president. So the way it works is you get the bare minimum of a constitution and bylaws. And so you can amend bylaws and add them in there as long as it's voted on and all of that. And then you send it to national to get it approved. So this is how the Detroit branch has a board chair. So back 15 years ago, there was no such thing as a board chair. So a board chair runs the board and there's an executive director. That job is to bring funds in. And so like I expressed earlier, that is the vision that I want to bring this branch to, a $3 million chapter. In order to do that, we have to evolve. So the way that I'm doing it is I'm following the successful branches. So if this was something out of that was wrong, why is it allowed in other branches and why are they successful?
Is there, how would you explain or how do you manage the difference between volunteerism?
Right.
And again, I know that it takes place in other places, that there are times when board members are compensated, but it can't interfere with volunteerism.
Absolutely.
So I don't know the governance of the NAACP. Is that something else that has changed? Is that there is now the potential to allocate funding to board members?
So it's always been that way. It just wasn't called stipend. It was called something else. There was a word that our vice president used in the meeting. I don't recall, but I'm sure if Jasmine can pull up the minute meetings, if you documented it, it was called a different thing. But as she expressed in the meeting, there's always been compensation or reimbursement for things that you do for the board or for the organization, period. So that idea of, okay, that's not how it's ran. It's ludicrous. It's ridiculous. That has not been the case. If you choose not to be reimbursed, that's on you. But there's no law against allowing or accepting being reimbursed. I mean, come on. If you're doing this work and you're volunteering your time, when you volunteer your time for an organization, you get to eat, right? You get to drink some water. Who pays for that? Is that fair that all of the volunteers have to pay for their own food? Or is it a way of compensating and saying thank you? That's a monetary expense. And so all organizations have that.
Mm-hmm. So I'm kind of paraphrasing here. You correct me if you feel like I'm saying something. So for you, you became president. You felt like you wanted to make some changes, some systemic changes that would forward this chapter of the NAACP.
Right.
And for you, it would be more in line with the vision for the future and the societal times and sustainability.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I expressed before, there's no way to survive another 110 years thinking that this is the mama and papa, no disrespect, organization. You have to evolve, you have to grow. And so keep in mind, we started off in January with 398 members. We're at 1298 now. So I'm doing something right. Like I said, I'm following the model of successful branches, period. So it's not something that is new. No one's out here trying to come up. $1,200? Come on now. I mean, that's just not realistic in this society. Like prior to doing this volunteerism, I was making $90,000 to $120,000 a year in a corporate job doing the work. So this is volunteer. This is nowhere near what a person would make. An executive director. I mean, the Urban League, that's not a volunteer position. That's a paid position. And all the other organizations, it's a paid position. And so why can't we take the NAACP to that next level and have a board chair that runs the board and have an executive director that can continue to secure funding? So the president isn't acting as the legislative director and the executive director and the president. So that's pretty much what I'm doing. I'm wearing those hats because I'm the one writing the grants. I'm the one out there trying to secure funding. I'm the one sitting in the meetings to find out, where the laws and the bills that are coming down with the chairs. So I'm wearing multiple hats for free. And so people have to get out of this mindset of I'm trying to come up. This is a lot of work.
I'm going to move on unless there's something else you want to say.
Whatever.
I mean, I'm going to segue into the next chapter. I'm here to just
debunk all of this.
And so with that, the allegation was that $5,000 was allocated for, given to, diverted to a treasurer to do an audit, an internal audit. Which raised conflict of interest issues. Can you explain?
So first of all, the dollar amount once more, he needs to get the facts straight because that's not correct. So initially when we started to do the audit, because we had no transition, I repeat, no documentation was transferred over. So we got all of this, we got a bank, we had to order bank statements to see exactly where we were with regards to the bank. Now, keep in mind, the branch has not had an audit, from what I'm told, in close to 10 to 20 years. So that's a flag. That's a flag in itself. As far back as my treasurer was able to see was 10 years. So that's a flag in itself. So we're taking over something that we have no transitional documentation. We want to make sure that we're covering ourselves as a board because once more, that's a fiduciary responsibility of a board. And so we're looking at that. And when I reached out to, it was called Moss. Was it Adam? Adam Moss. Thank you. It was a auditing organization, a company. This is what they do. They do audits, they do forensic audits and so forth. And so I was told, and I have the documentation, that it was not, he said, to be honest, because you're an organization trying to rebuild, it wouldn't be wise to do an external audit starting off, because if you don't have any documentation, it's going to cost more billable hours. It's going to be more billable hours to do it because we don't have anything to go on. His suggestion or recommendation was to do an internal audit, then take that documentation and give it to an external audit or external to review, and then get the feedback. So both the internal audit and external audit or external review, you're both on the same page. And so that's what we did. And so we shopped around and looked at various places, and they were asking for a lot of money. And so as a board, we all discussed, and it's in the meeting minutes. Which month was that, Jasmine?
I believe it was March.
Okay.
March 11th.
We strategized and talked around after we saw how damaged the branch was and what we could do next, and how we would do this. And so being that this was his profession outside of the board, so he would be working outside to do the work, we all agreed that that would be feasible, a feasible amount to support him in getting the work done. If that meant bringing on people to support him to do the audit, whatever it took, that we would allocate that funds to help him to facilitate this. And so keep in mind, I did share with you what's been going on. We're looking at, it took 6 months to get all this information and gather everything. And so keep in mind, the board was, caught up to speed on what was going on each month in our meetings. So people got an idea of what was going on. So it wasn't me to say, hey, let me give somebody some money to do. I mean, it's just ludicrous. Everything is in transparency. Everybody has the information. All the board made the decision. Jasmine, who was it in the minutes who decided that, or who mentioned or spoke about it? Oh, how we should do this and what would be more feasible for us as a board? Okay.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear.
There's no detail on that. Well, all I wrote was, so as the secretary, I record each of our meetings so I can be as accurate as possible with our meeting minutes. And looking back, there is a discussion of us talking about it. I believe Edward had a PowerPoint presentation talking about what he had discovered before, with the bank accounts for like 3 months that they were trying to get a hold of the bank accounts. And then he talked about his expertise and the difference between an external audit and internal audit. That was in his presentation. And so based off of that discussion, we all made a decision after they explained that it's going to cost us a lot to even do an external audit. So he said what he would do, and everybody listened, everybody talked, everybody discussed, and we made our decision, as there's a motion in our March executive board meeting minutes.
So was there any discussion about the potential conflict of interest, that at least that this may look like a conflict of interest?
Not to my knowledge. No, we didn't. No, there wasn't any concern from any board members that in the meeting. Otherwise, I would have.
And keep in mind, we reached out to the national, and this information was disclosed. So it isn't like we were secretly doing something, trying to hide it. I mean, come on now. Everything was in the open. We documented it, and we had full disclosure to call and say, how do we do this, this, and this? What does that look like? How does this, why hasn't this happened? And keep in mind, when we got the branch, it was in, what's the word? My brain is foggy. We were out of compliance because they had no documentation, or they didn't do any tax, they didn't turn any accounting for 2 to 3 years. And so, yes. And so we were out of compliance. So it's like, okay, we have to get into compliance, but how do we get in compliance if we have no documentation to say where the money went? We have no documentation of what was done last year or the year before that. So it was a cluster of mess that we had. And how we got documentation, we got a grocery bag, a Safeway grocery bag full of receipts. This was their so-called transition to us. A grocery bag with receipts. Yes. So it was mainly getting a needle in a haystack, trying to put this together. And as we started to uncover, we saw multiple bank accounts, multiple EIN numbers, LLCs. I mean, it was just crazy. Every day was something different. And keep in mind, there were still checks out there that were coming in, and bills that were automatically withdraw, like taken out, like they were already set on auto payments. And so there was so many things going on with that account, and we couldn't close it because we were doing the audit. And then we were told, in the event we have to turn it over to investigators, we have to keep it open. And so, you know, every day is something new. Oh, we didn't know that we were paying this because there was no documentation to say exactly what was paid, who, you know, what were our contractors. And then I got, when we finally got into the accounts, which took us a couple of months, the president's accounts, all of the documentation was wiped clean, the database. So I didn't even know who our partners were. None of that information was afforded to me or any of us. So you have to understand the disarray that we were given. And then even still on top of that, we're trying to rebrand the organization. And so my thing is, community can't know that it's this bad because we would never be taken serious. So we have to create our own narrative, and we have to get out there and do the work and just figure it out, because we have to fix this and we have to keep going. And that's what the mindset was, everybody. And it's exhausting. It's, you know, it's exhausting, a lot of work, as you can see.
Is this internal audit something that is available for the public to look at?
I would have to talk to, because we're under an investigation now. So we did turn it over to the authorities in May. We voted on that too. That's in the minutes. So I would have to ask if that's, because I know they're doing a investigation now, and I don't know if that would be.
Okay. Well, I'm going to move on.
Okay.
Because we got a lot again.
Go ahead. Correction. You said May, Sadiqa, but it was, I believe it was June.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
The allegation is that there's a potential quid pro quo, whatever it is, you know what I'm talking about, that you accepted a loan from an individual, and that individual was then made a board member, and the loan was never paid back. Now, the name that was brought up, and I'm only repeating the name because it was brought up yesterday. So the name that was brought up was Bola.
Bola, yes.
That you accepted a $5,000 loan, and shortly after that, Bola became a board member, and the funds were never repaid.
So that isn't true. So initially, I met Bola last year when I was in pain, and so he said, "Oh yeah, I can't stand your saying da 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 da," you know, all of that. Whatever. And he said, "I want to support you, and however I can support you, how can I support you?" And I said, "Well, I could use some funding to help pay for some of the marketing and some of the things that I'm doing." He said, "Okay, I will give you a donation." And so I said, "All right, thank you." So he gave a donation to my campaign. Moving along, he said, "You know, I am a longshoreman, and I serve on the board, a Black longshoreman something." It was him and his friend. And so they said that they would be interested in coming on the board and supporting. He said, "Because I work in labor, I serve on boards with the union, I would love to take on this opportunity." And I said, "Okay, well, let me see." So keep in mind, he was not the only person that was interviewed for the position. Like I said, I interviewed everybody and put them in the position that was suited for their skill set. And so I put him in that position because he sold me on, he started this Black coalition like 20 years ago, and it was a huge success. They kind of started their own Black union or group, and it was very successful with closing cases of people that were having issues in longshoremen. And, you know, with the longshoremen. And so I said, okay, wow, he could really help in the area of labor. But he was not just the chair, he was the co-chair. So he wasn't just the one taking the lead. It was him and our third vice president at the time, Claude Buford. And so they both bounced ideas off of each other. And the plan was to go in and get some of the trades to come in and support for jobs. And so they were supporting the economic development chair at the time to try to bring jobs in. And so that's some of the things that was on the list and the goals of as far as the vision. And so the vision was to advocate, to educate, to build and protect, or protect and build. And so that's always been the motto of where we want to take it. And so supporting and helping communities with the trades was a big idea for us. And I thought that would be huge for the NAACP to partner up with some of the labor unions, to make sure that we're advocating for civil rights for our people, as well as getting them the jobs that, for economic development. So that's a piece of the building piece. And so
there was no loan.
No. And so
there was BOLA did not loan you any money.
No. And so when
so there's no money to pay back.
No. So the way he set it up, or he framed it, so he was a part also of the Soto group. And so bring the Sonics back or something like that. And so he was big on pushing that narrative. And so I said, okay, well, let me sit down and meet with them. And if this is something that will protect or help the organization, I will interview and see if this is a way, this is a go. And so come to find out, after my meeting with the group, it was not really about what the initial idea was. And so he decided, as a board member, to go out there and speak on behalf of the NAACP and make partnerships or make promises that I had no knowledge of. And so he was making moves and doing things that were not okay. And so when someone does an infraction, or they do something that is against the bylaws of the Constitution, we document it. And so he had 3 of them. And when I commenced to talk to him about it, it was a little bit of arrogance, and I don't have to listen to you, da 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 da. And so I said, okay. And so it continued and progressed to that. And so he was removed because of his actions, his behavior. It's documented. And so when that happened, he was upset, and he's like, well, that money that I gave you as a loan, you owe me that back. And it's enough going on. I'm like, okay, whatever. And so that's my mindset, because it's like, I'm not going to argue with you. If you give something and then you want it back, okay. I'm not going to argue with you. And so then when he found out he was removed from the board because of his own transgressions, he served me with a, I don't know, what is it called? That I gave you a loan, and so now you have to pay me back. And so I'm like, okay, like whatever. Okay. That's the mindset. So I will be going to court with it. I will be going to court, and I have my documentation. He has his, and we'll see what happens. But it was never I give you this money and you put me on the board. That doesn't even make any sense to me. My thing is, had he not had the background in labor and the stuff that he was doing with the longshoremen, I would have never put him in that position. And he asked to be on the board, just like his friend, who was also a longshoreman, who ended up becoming the religious chair. So they both came on the board.
But there was never, I will loan you this money, you will pay me back this money with interest, without interest. There was nothing like that. And there's no documentation that exists.
No. So there was a text that he sent me to say, hey, I want the $5,000 back that you owe me. And I said, okay, I'm going through some things. My thing is, if you give me some money to support what I'm doing, and then you want it back, I'm not going to argue with you. If you want to do that, that's on you.
Now, did it go to you personally, or did it go to your campaign?
It went to the campaign to support the marketings. Yes.
Okay. Again, this is Tony Beat. You're listening to Street Beat on RainierAvenueRadio.world. My guest is Sadiqa Sakin, president of the Seattle King County chapter of the NAACP. Also joining me is the secretary, Jasmine Williams. We are, if you're just tuning in, we talked a little bit earlier about Ms. Sakин's history and her vision for the future of the NAACP. We're spending most of this time addressing allegations that have been levied by Mr. Carl Mack, former president of the NAACP. Now, you know, just like I said, we have open, honest conversation. This has carried a lot of weight. It became very public. A lot of things were said that could be deemed offensive, that could be again inappropriate. Mr. Mack stands on what he's saying and his approach for saying it. And so we're kind of unwrapping some of these things now and giving Ms. Sakin an opportunity to address them. And again, thank you for coming on the show today. And so again, staying with that whole theme of fiduciary responsibility, Mr. Mack mentioned that there were two types of funds. I'm assuming he's speaking on behalf of the NAACP, where there is restricted funds and unrestricted funds.
Yes.
And the allegation is that you took whatever happened, the money that was for a program called ACT-SO.
Yes.
That you took the money and you left the kids without any money, and they had to, someone had to go to Alaska Airlines so that they could take the trip that they were supposed to make because the money was gone under your watch.
Okay, so let's start off. We got to go back to January 1st. So, like, once more, we didn't get the books until January 17th. And so it was brought to my attention that there was no ACT-SO account. So let's be clear, there was no account at all. And the chair at that time, like I said, there's a due process, so I would not name any names, had the funds in their personal bank account. And so when this was brought to our attention, we're like, oh no, that's the reason why I said, okay, you cannot be the chair of ACT-SO anymore, because if this ever got out, this would be a conflict of interest that it could potentially harm the branch. So that person is still on the board, but they were not to be the ACT-SO chair because they had the funds in their personal bank account. We have documentation, and that's also in the investigation. So when we got wind of the money.
Before you got there, this money was in a personal bank
account.
Before you became president.
Yeah, I brought that. Yes, but due process, I can show you, but I have to be careful. Okay. Like I said, there's a due process. And so it was in a personal bank account. There was no ACT-SO account. So I later on found out that the ACT-SO account was closed in early 17. During the audit, we found out that there was a ACT-SO account that was at the Seattle Metropolitan Credit Union or Mount Zion Metropolitan Credit Union. It's now Seattle Credit Union. So that's where the ACT-SO account was, and it was closed in March of 17. So those funds were in a personal bank account. So when that was discovered, we asked to return the funds. So initially, we found some minutes. We went into the church because there's a lot of boxes and stuff. We're still in the process of moving all that stuff out of the church. We found a document, meeting minutes that stated, and I also sent that to you, that the branch loaned $11,000 to ACT-SO for the kids to go in 2018. And they were to return the money once they raised the funds or what have you. So needless to say, the funds were never raised. And so when I got wind of the meeting minutes, it's documented in our minutes, I asked to return all of the funds back to the branch. And so typically the ACT-SO is a 501c3. It falls under the 501c3 umbrella of national. And so they're supposed to raise their funds. And so starting off, there were no funds. There were the funds that was in the personal bank account. And so keep in mind, we're doing an audit, which later turned into an investigation. So we want to make sure we do everything correct. And so that money was supposed to go back into the bank account to show that we honor what was put in the minutes.
Okay.
And so, okay.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah. And so as time progressed, things started coming in, and we're realizing that all of these debts were not paid in 18. And so in order for us to actually be a functioning, running branch, we have to pay our debts. We have to pay our bills. And so we're paying bills and stuff, and things are just going. So AXO, as far as fundraising, they started to raise funds. So that statement is not true at all. AXO right now, that bank account has $9,873, and it now is a bank account that is separate from all of the rest, how it should have been from the beginning.
Wow. Again, we're almost out of time.
Okay.
And there's a lot of allegations here. And I thank you for taking the time to answer these questions thoughtfully. And I've tried to cover most of the fiduciary stuff, which I thought was critical.
I can come back.
And important. But again, there's a lot out there, and there's a lot was said, and I want to give you the opportunity to address it. One of the things that came up was a question of your integrity.
Okay.
And, the reason why this is connected to this is because it was brought up yesterday. And it was your saying that you were a member of the Delta Sigma Theta sorority.
Okay.
And again, I don't necessarily know the connection with that between the NAACP and whatever your role is, but it was brought up as this is another question of her integrity and her ability to be honest. And so I'm asking you that question because there was some you saying you were, and then backpedaling and saying you would provide evidence. And so I'm just asking you now, are you a member of the Delta Sigma Theta? You are a member.
Yes. So this was brought to my attention. And keep in mind, there's a smear. When it was brought to my attention, there was a smear campaign that started, and there was so many things coming in. I'm dealing with that, and then on top of that, I need to prove who I am to these people, or else what? So it wasn't, oh, let's support you as a sister, get through this, and then we'll work on this or take care of this afterwards. So I was hurt, and so my thing overall with my sisters. I didn't appreciate the way they approached me with regards to the information. I'm already being attacked on social media. And now you're coming to me telling me I better do this, this, and this, or else. That's not how this works. And so when I'm ready, I will take care of that, or I will address that. My thing is, if that was a requirement to show when I was running, then absolutely. But this is a different time, and all of the things that I'm dealing with, I don't have to prove myself in that area. That is my personal, that has nothing to do with the job and what I bring to the table with work. The work speaks for itself.
Okay, I'm not trying to cut you. I'm just
no worries. No.
I do want to ask you this question. I wanted to stick to some core issues that you'd be able. This is one that's basically going to be just your opinion.
Okay.
Why do you think that Mr. Mack has chosen to come out publicly against you in this way? Do you have any?
So yes, I mean, just thinking about everything, listening to the recording or whatever his response yesterday, he had this impression that, as he put it, is that I'm just this silly girl, because he used the word girl a few times, and I just don't know what I'm doing. I'm just, just out here trying to figure things out. And so I honestly feel that when you're a mentor gives advice, but then they step back. They don't try to control and micromanage how you run or what you're doing. So she was my mentor. I met her when she was 16. Mentee. I met her when she was 16. So I'm her mentor. So if she makes a decision, I can be upset all day if she doesn't do it the way I want her to do it, but I have to respect that she is her own person. And I feel as though when I said no, I'm gonna do it my way, this is when he turned and became this. And it's just, this is crazy. to me.
Will you come back?
Absolutely. We can debunk all the rest of them.
Okay. It's me. Not
No.
Right now, we're about to shut the show down. I appreciate you coming in.
All right.
Again, thanks everyone for listening. This is the person Bola, whose name was mentioned, who came in the door, but the show's almost over now.
I just want to say, I did not give her the money. It was a loan, and I do have a paperwork.
Okay, well, I'm gonna have to.
Said it was a loan.
We'll have to come back to that. We'll have to come back, and we'll get an opportunity. So, right now, we're cutting the. Bola, do me a favor.
You put my phone number on social media.
Don't do this on my
Watch
show,
me.
right?
Watch me, brother.
Okay.
You put my number on social media.
And again, I'm
really?
gonna ask.
So what?
Sadiqa, I'm asking the same thing of you as we shut this down.
Get out. Get out.
That's it. That's all the time that we have. Obviously, we will be doing more of this. And getting to find this out for your interest in the public. Again, it's me, Tony B, your host of Street Beat, saying, remember, whether you believe you can or whether you believe you can't, you are probably right. I'm out.
Thank you.
This is Paul Pearson, host of Star Time. And when I'm not using my GPS to navigate the land of 1,000 dances, I'm listening to RainierAvenueRadio.world.
Hello, this is Sage Prince. Are you considering making lifestyle changes, eating a healthier diet, but you're not quite sure where to start? Well, I can help. Just My Opinion, a music program centered in R&B and hip-hop, but delivered in an organic, free-range music mix, providing you a nutrient-rich listening environment that can improve your mood and overall sense of well-being. So start your healthy lifestyle with healthier listening. Check out Just My Opinion with Sage Prince here on RainierAvenueRadio.world.
RainierAvenueRadio.world is your community radio station. We are a 24/7 internet radio station and multimedia network dedicated to amplifying the diverse voices of our Seattle communities and beyond. You'll hear a range of music, sports, regional traffic, local and national news, happenings around Greater Seattle, and talk shows including political, current events, diverse languages, and children's programming created by members of our communities. And we will continue to broadcast live from our communities. We also provide digital media training to community members to become their own content creators. Check out the CADMA page on our website. You can hear us online at RainierAvenueRadio.world or on TuneIn. And follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. RainierAvenueRadio.world.
This is Mondo Bancaro for Mondo's World. We will be discussing some interesting subjects. Sometimes I might even have some guests. So please listen to my show on Rainier Avenue Radio.